that the security of this country depends on a temporary suspension of travel from these countries, a temporary suspension of refugees coming into the country. And here is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals saying Washington has standing because of the interests of state universities and hundreds of students there. That is a pretty interesting conclusion. Let me just briefly reset the situation, and that is that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has handed down its ruling. It has upheld the temporary restraining order from that federal judge in Washington that it has, as I say, a temporary restraining order stopping President Trump's executive order limiting travel from 7 largely Muslim nations and from all refugees coming into the country, an indefinite suspension of refugees from Syria. He said it was a matter of national security until they could figure out a more effective extreme vetting measure to be able to tell who was coming into the country and whether they meant us harm or not. Let's bring in our panel to discuss these stunning developments. Lisa Booth, columnist with the Washington Examiner, Julie Pace, White House correspondent for the Associated Press, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. I'm sure, Julie, you have been on your little machine there trying to find out
right
what.
Next to me.
Any reaction?
No reaction yet. I'm in the same boat as John Roberts right now. We expected this to come down a little bit later this evening, so this caught a lot of people by surprise. But we are expecting something from the White House soon. As John said, I think we're probably going to have the official reaction and then the presidential Twitter reaction. But more broadly, beyond what the White House just says today, I mean, this is a big blow to the president in his first month in office. You usually don't see this kind of check on presidential power this early in a presidency, although certainly this case will go on through the legal system.
What did they expect? In other words, there had been comments, and you could tell it in President Trump's remarks after the hearing, after he had listened in on the hearing. He was pretty contemptuous of the lawyers, the 3 judges in that Court of Appeals panel. Did they think this was going to go against him?
They weren't really trying to make predictions on it, but certainly they listened to the audio that we all heard when these judges were being pretty tough on the government lawyer in trying to get to the heart of the matter. I think the argument that you're going to see from the White House going forward, we're already starting to hear this broadly, is that presidents, and this is true, have a lot of sway over national security decisions. I think as this goes forward in the court system, you're going to hear them try to back up that argument that this is the president of the United States using intelligence information that he has to try to protect national security.
Of course, one of and let me bring Lisa into this, one of the counter-arguments there was the judge, and again, you know, there is some interesting facts here. Here's a judge in a federal district court in Washington state arguing with the president about national security, but he said there's no evidence that any of the people from these 7 countries have committed fatal terrorist attacks, and that the argument about national security doesn't hold much weight.
Well, I think for the Trump administration, the hastiness has really hurt the administration, whether it was the chaos over green cards or the fact that they moved forward with this without having the Supreme Court nominee in place. And I think we've seen a lot of tension in Congress, and that's only going to escalate because the Democratic Party right now is going to be looking for any wins that they can get. They can certainly point to this as a win, exploit this as a win. And it's also going to further hurt President Trump as he tries to move forward both his cabinet nominees as well as the Supreme Court nominee as well.
I mean, when you think of the fact that President Trump so clearly came in and some of his top people came in as disruptors, they were going to shake up Washington, they're going to change the system, and they were going to, as the president said, there's a new sheriff in town. He just got a full stop sign, a red light, from a district court judge in Washington and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people voted for President Trump because they wanted that disruption, they wanted that change, they wanted some of the things that he, said that he was going to do, drain the swamp, if you will. But there's also checks and balances to that as well, and we're obviously seeing that play out in the courts as well. And I think we'll also see that play out in Congress as well. I mean, right now he's sort of moved forward just with executive actions, but at some point he's going to have to govern. He's going to have to work with Congress to move legislation forward. So we're going to see some of those checks and balances play out here in the next few months, and as we're witnessing tonight as well.
Charles, something, isn't it? That's my question for you.
It's good that you keep it open-ended.
Yeah.
Because I got a lot to say.
Go.
Look, the new sheriff has discovered that unlike Dodge City in Washington, there are other pre-existing institutions, and he's just run into one. Now, I think the judge, the district court judge, in saying that the threat is not what the president thinks it is is way overstepping his bounds. His job is not to decide, to weigh the national security issues having to do with immigration. I happen to agree with the judge, but that doesn't matter. The president has the constitutional authority to decide. He may have decided wrongly, but he has the authority, and the judge, I think, was wrong. I don't think there's anybody who should be surprised that he was upheld by the Ninth Circuit as the most overturned, most left-wing court in the country. I just hope that the administration was ready for this with a contingency plan. I will remind you that when the district judge ruled against the administration, they did not file a brief for 24 hours. It should have been ready in 10 minutes to be handed over. And I hope they have, now that they have an attorney general at least in place, they have a strategy for what they're going to do. And my advice would be, don't go to the Supreme Court, because it'll bounce back.
Because there'll be a tie?
It'll be a tie. You're not going to get anywhere. You'll be back in the ninth. Go back to the district court. And I suspect, as a pure, cynical political ploy, why not have it as an issue? You'll blame the court if anything happens. You'll be able to say you're being stymied. You need to have a fifth justice on the court. For political, raw, cynical reasons, I think it would be advantageous to let the stay stand. I don't know what they're going to decide, but they should have a contingency plan ready as of yesterday.
But, you know, I was going to say, regardless of the merits of this argument, the idea that courts can sit there and say, your argument about national security doesn't persuade us, that's happened before. During the Bush administration, there were several decisions after 9/11 that President Bush made, and the Supreme Court several times said, no, you've gone too far here, you've got to stop.
It's not that unusual, but it is unusual for it to happen in the first 10 days of a new administration.
Well, I assume unprecedented.
And remember, with Obama, the temporary stay on his immigration, the legalization of the 5 million illegal immigrants in the country, was stayed by a district judge in Texas and remained in place up until today, until the time ran out for Obama and it effectively died. So this happens on all sides. But, you know, Trump himself, with his tweets and his anger and his responses, has elevated this to an issue where it's monopolizing our show, as if it was like the handing of the 10 Commandments from Sinai. It's a ruling from the Ninth Circuit that everybody should have expected.
Well,